Welcome back, everybody. This is Modern Randy. I am Randy, and today we're going over another standard deck. This is the Rug FloodCaller deck, the Teamer FloodCaller deck, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to be known by it. This is the deck that has kind of came out of nowhere when it came into Worlds, and essentially has been doing steady progress and keeps getting innovated on, basically to no end, and it's something I've picked up as well. As always, guys, though, before we get started, if you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel, it helps me out. And let me know what you guys are playing in your RCQs, what you're taking, what you're seeing. Love to hear from you. So, for anyone who's not familiar with this deck or is unfamiliar with it and as a whole, the deck is built around FloodCaller, Valley FloodCaller. It's a 2 and a blue for an Otter wizard. It has flash. You may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, birds, frogs, otters, and rats you control get +1/+1 to end a turn, and you untap them. So pretty much the combo essentially is you have FloodCaller out, you have Enduring Vitality. Excuse me, it's one of the enchantment creatures. So 2 green and a colorless, or generic. Has vigilance, and it has creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color, and then if it dies, you can return it to the battlefield. If it was a creature as an enchantment, it's a 3/3. So FloodCaller with Vitality out, and then you play Song. I'm not going to pronounce this song. And it creates X 1/1 black rat creature tokens. This creature can't block, and creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. So, like many people, you probably didn't know this card even existed. I definitely didn't know Song existed until I started seeing this deck and started playing with it. So, but the combo essentially is you FloodCaller, you have FloodCaller out, you have Enduring Vitality, and you have the Song out, so you make a bunch of rats. Then you play any 1 mana spell or any spell to untap them. They get +1/+1. You can retap them for mana and essentially, go infinite, essentially. Which you kind of can go infinite with this deck. If you have Stormchaser's Talent out, so this one it's 1 mana, it makes a 1/1 blue otter token with prowess, and then you can level up for 4 mana and return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So this plus this town ain't big enough and enough mana, you can essentially go infinite, because this town ain't big enough, only costs 2. If you're returning a non-land permanent you control to its owner's hand. So this town ain't big enough, you cast this, bounce, something else, and whatever, doesn't matter, get this in the graveyard. You have FloodCaller, Enduring, some rats, you level this up to level 2, you buy back this town ain't big enough. You play this town ain't big enough, you bounce back Stormchaser's Talent, you recast Stormchaser's Talent, get another 1/1, trigger prowess effects, untap all your guys, be able to recast them for mana, level this up to level 2, rebuy back this town ain't big enough, and you can essentially go infinite. So that is essentially what we're trying to set up with this deck, is to go infinite or just make enough prowess tokens, prowess creatures, or make some rats and just kind of go to town that way as well. This deck it looks super weird if you take a look at it. It doesn't look anything crazy. It looks kind of like a mismatch of a bunch of cards. We're playing a bunch of like 2-ofs, 1-ofs, things like that. You're just like, it looks like someone who, how do I want to put this? Got lost in the sauce almost, built this deck, but it did a lot better than it looks on paper, I can tell you that much. Because I remember looking at this deck the first time and going, yeah, someone got drunk, it's okay, they'll figure it out in the morning. But no, the deck is actually really good. So, just kind of going over our early game 1-drops, we have Bushwhack and we have Analyze Pollen. So Bushwhack allows us to go get a basic land and put it to our hand, so it allows us to only play 20 lands in this deck. That actually needs, quite a bit of mana to go off. Also, the target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. It's a lot bigger than you think it's going to be, and you can kill a lot of creatures. It turns out this having, a 1/1 prowess token and playing a bunch of all these little spells will make that creature pretty big pretty fast. There's many times I have killed a 4/4 or a 3/3 with my little blue and red otter, and it lived and still was able to swing in that turn. And then we have Analyze Pollen as well. So this one has an additional cost to cast. You can collect evidence 8, so you exile cards with total mana value of 8 or greater from your graveyard. And you get to search your library for a basic land on the front half. If you collected the evidence, though, you get to search your library for a creature or a land card, reveal it. So this helps us go get one of our FloodCallers if we need it. It helps us get an Enduring Vitality if we need it. In a pinch, it can get you Questing Druid to be able to get the Seek the Beast type things. So it does have a lot of utility in this deck. And then we're also, we're running 2 Questing Druid here, basically for the Seek the Beast portion. It's also a creature as a whole, and we're playing a bunch of non-green spells, so it's going to get big. We have Thundertrap Trainer here. It's an Otter as well, which helps with the Valley Floodcaller, as well as letting us dig deeper into our deck. And it's a good late game deck when you and your opponent are both running out of resources. You get to look at the top 8 cards essentially and get 2 instants or sorceries from them. I'm sorry, it's a non-creature, not land. My bad. It's so much better than what I was thinking it was. Sorry, I keep thinking of it as the old card that only got instants or sorceries. But yeah, so you get to get basically anything from your deck besides creatures, which is huge because most of our things we want to get are non-creatures anyway. And then, like I said, we're playing the 4 Valley Floodcallers, the 4 Enduring Vitality. No surprise here. Stormchaser's Challenge is a huge card. This card has so much value, being able to make a 1/1. This town ain't big enough. Combos so well with this card. Being able to bounce your opponents, like creature, bouncing this, knowing you're going to get another creature next turn. I'm playing 4 Torture Towers because we need interaction. We need removal. It's one of the best 1-drops you can be playing right now. We're playing 3 of the Raising Furnace / Seeming Sauna. Card is really good. You wouldn't think it, but there's a lot of times that I have opened up or cast the second half of this card as well, just in my limited playtesting. Being able to draw extra cards at the end of turn, always good. We are we are playing 2 Up the Beanstalks. Not the most amazing card in this deck. Obviously, we only have 7 ways to trigger it essentially with the songs, and this town ain't big enough. So this town ain't big enough though. When you have Up the Beanstalk in play, it's just so huge. You start just amassing so many cards so quickly. We're also playing 1 Bitter Reunion. Helps us with sacrifice creatures you control gain haste till end of turn, so it helps us kind of go off with our Floodcaller if we have we're playing a bunch of Stormchaser talents and things like that. As well as just it's good card draw for us to be able to discard things we don't need. It also works well with this town is big enough, being able to bounce this back to our hand, get more value from it, etc. And then, of course, the 3 songs. So, this is by no means the most stock list of that you'll see. I don't think there is a stock 60 list right now for these decks. They keep changing, they keep getting innovated. One of the biggest problems with this deck as a whole is the mono red or the red aggro matchups. That is like your biggest challenge for this deck right now. I think that once these decks figure out how to consistently beat that deck or consistently put themselves in like a 60-70% win rate against it or percentage against it to where they're not, right now 40 or 30% against it, I think this deck will become probably tier 1. I think it's sitting right now right at like 1.52 as far as like ability to play against anything in the field. This deck is incredibly resilient. It's incredibly strong. I see why people have started kind of gravitating towards this deck. It's definitely something I'm going to start working on as well moving forward. It's just a good deck as a whole. Going over the sideboard, obviously this is not a stock sideboard by any means because we have a bunch of different things that are going on. Floodpit Drowner is a card that has definitely started seeing play and getting picked up in these sideboard lists though. I was running 3 when I was playtesting this. So 1 in the blue for 2/1 Flash Vigilance. When it enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls, put a stun counter on it, and then you can pay a blue and a generic to tap. Shuffle Floodpit Drowner and target creature with a stun counter on it into their owner's library. So super good at getting rid of the problematic creatures this deck runs into, like Shelly, for example, or Shieldred is a huge card against this deck. So this is really good against that. It's good against the red aggressive decks to tap down their creature, make sure they don't have it. It's an easy way to deal with Screaming Nemesis. We have 2 Disdainful Strokes, which I was trying out over like negates and stuff. It really helps us against like all the spells we want to counter most of the time are usually like 4 drops or bigger. We want to counter like board wipes. We want to counter Shieldred, things like that. So like just things like that came up. So I do want some kind of negates in here as well. So I'm trying to figure out the sideboard, which I don't think I have this remotely figured out. This is just a list that I was trying out. I made a couple changes to it as a whole. So I think it's a good list. I just don't think it's the best list out there. And I don't know if we'll ever find the best list out there until someone, inevitably smarter than me figures it out. Then we were also running 3 Screaming Nemesis. It's a real good anti-aggro card. Ironically, it's really good against the red aggressive decks because they have a hard time dealing with this and also not losing their creatures to it. Same thing with the 2 Burst Lightning. We're just adding 2 more removal spells into the mix. against them. Paw Patch formation to deal with, you know, big flyers, enchantments. Worst case scenario, draws a card and carries a food. Good against the red aggro decks. And then I was running 2 Rao Clapping of Wit. I have seen a couple players play this card. I wanted to try it out against like the mid-range grindy decks. I gotta say, it felt really good when I was able to ultimate this card. Being able to give your spells Storm is just kind of ridiculously broken. When you can Song for 4 and essentially get 12 tokens out of it, it feels really good. It feels like you broke the game. I don't know if this card is necessarily worth playing as a whole. I really enjoyed playing it. I might cut it down to like only 1 copy, but I do think it's really good in the mid-range grindy decks. Which is what you know, Standard's kind of developed into. If you ever watch any of my metagame breakdowns where I talk about what's going on the past weekend and what was going on in the challenges and the big tournaments, you can take a look and see, you know, how big Dimir and Golgari midrange is. So definitely want to take a look at that if you're trying to get into Standard, trying to play an RCQ. It will help you at least get some basic knowledge of what's going on in the format. But I do think Rao was really good against kind of like the mid-range grindy decks I played against. He wasn't amazing all the time, obviously, and is a liability early on because like you're not exactly casting this on turn 4 every time. But I do think it's really good. I think at the worst case it's a 4 mana draw 3, discard 2 cards. So being able to filter out lands that you don't need or anything like that is kind of good. Excuse me. He also gets kind of big as well whenever you cast a whenever we're casting a non-creature spell, we're putting a counter on him, so it's not hard to ultimate him. I was able to ultimate him, I think 2 turns after I played him. And it's just, like I said, it's really good. That emblem is ridiculous. Plus, you get to draw 3 cards, so it's never a bad thing to have. But this is essentially the sideboard I was running. As a whole, the deck is really good. Like I said, the biggest problem this deck runs into right now is the mono red or the red aggressive decks that are running around. That is your biggest trouble right now. That being said, there are some sideboard options that people have been talking about that have been being discussed, and I kind of wanted to go over them as a whole here, just to give you guys some more information about this deck, kind of some more ideas. So there is thoughts of adding white into this deck. It's something I kind of have thought about as well. I thought about doing a light white splash. Get Shelter to the Ghost is just a huge card in general. Being able to give your creatures lifelink. If you're giving lifelink to a prowess creature, it just becomes so much better when you're being able to, you know, pump that creature up to 2, 3, 4 times. So you're just making it even bigger, getting so much lifelink from it. Scavenging Ooze is another one that you'll see running around in the sideboards that we got from Foundations. I don't hate this card as a whole, but also it's not as like resilient for life gain. So I think it's more of a graveyard hate type strategy, but I don't necessarily agree with it as a whole. Dissecting Tools is a card that I've seen play. It's a card I've had played against me back in the Columbus Open or Columbus Con, whatever they call this, the tournament they did in Columbus like last month. When I played in that, I was playing a red aggressive deck, and my opponent did play Dissecting Tools against me, and turns out putting that on a lifelinking creature is pretty good when it has you know, +2/+2 on lifelink, and the death test doesn't matter when you're not playing big creatures. But you know, just being able to have lifelink and then also using that bushwhack ability to fight, so now your 1/1 becomes 4/4 because it gets the +2 plus that +2/+2 from the tools, plus the 1 from prowess. Just it became really bad really fast. The problem is though, it is 5 mana. That is not a good thing to have when you're trying to beat the red aggressive decks, having a 5 mana answer. The other one that has started to see a little bit more play or a little bit more talk about, let me do this for you guys, is this Herbology Instructor. So it's 2 mana, 1 in a green for a 1/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life. So this is really good in this deck because we have this town big enough, so this is a great card to kind of keep bouncing back and gaining life from. Also, it's a 1/3, so it blocks early on. It's not terrible in that regard. Then you can transform it. It's not really a big thing to transform it. It's 7 mana to transform, and you know it gets target creature and opponent controls gets -0/-X until end of turn, where X is this guy's power. So cool. That's not why you're playing it. You're playing it for the front half. And it's another card that's kind of getting tossed around as ideas for what to do with this deck to help out the red aggressive matchup. So just kind of something to think about, guys. If you're going to play this deck, you do need to figure out what you're doing for the mono red matchup. Essentially, that is definitely your biggest weakness. This deck has game against pretty much everything. You can beat the aggressive decks. It's not impossible by any means. but that is kind of like the big thing to think about here is like how you're going to beat the aggressive decks and what your game plan is for them. That being said, though, this is a deck that I really enjoyed. I think it's something you should try out if you like the combo style decks. It plays out way differently than you think you're going to play against it. Or you think it's going to play out, honestly, because I thought it was going to be a lot more clear cut. There's about 1.5 million different decisions you'll have most games. The biggest problem this deck has, I think, as a whole, is it can just lose to itself in the sense of like if you flood out or anything like that, which is also the same case, against like any deck that you play. I mean, you can play playing the best mono red deck in the world. If you draw 7 lands straight, you're probably losing that game no matter what. Same kind of concept here. Only we're only playing 20 lands, so it's just a little harder to flood out, but it is possible. I've done it already. So, but the deck's really strong. It's really just a really sweet deck as a whole, and it's constantly being innovated on too. I can guarantee you that this deck list will change probably another 40 times before we find the right 60 and 75 to go along with it. But as always, guys, if you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time.